We have made it to 2024, collectors, and this is an exciting show to start the year because now that we're in January 2024, we are only a few weeks away from the Culture Collision Trade Show. It's one of my favorite card shows of the year every year here in Atlanta. And this year, there's an extra little something that's going to make it very special for me. And that's because our new CardsHQ store, which is in Atlanta, right around the corner from the Culture Collision Trade Show, we're doing a special preview trade night during Culture Collision to show off our store because our store is opening to the public at the end of this month. Today, we're going to dive into all things Culture Collision and not just learn more about the show that's happening this month, but also learn more about how this show in many ways is changing the sports card hobby. This is a great discussion to be had, and I've got the organizers of Culture Collision with me today, so let's get started. Raphael, welcome back to the show.
Yes, thank you for having me, Geoff.
Absolutely. And Joyce, this is your first time here on one of our Sports Card Investor shows, but we're happy to have you here on the Geoff Wilson Show as well.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You are the Prism Goddess. We know Prism God over here, as he's known on social media, but you are Prism Goddess.
Yes, I am.
Lovely to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
And both of you have been working on the Culture Collision show. This January Culture Collision, I believe, is the fourth of these. I've been to all of these before. And I know you've been as much of a part of making this all work behind the scenes as Raphael has. This is a true family business. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Let me say this real quick before we kind of get into the segue everything. So she actually earned the right of Prism Goddess because in 2019, we had cases of Prism basketball. And I told her, babe, hold on to that case of Prism basketball. And she literally did not. I came back home from a card show and all of it was ripped. And that's honestly, to me, I felt like that's when she, established her name as Prism Goddess, in my opinion.
That's fair.
Appreciate that.
That's fair. How did you do? Anything big from that box?
I mean, we got a lot of Zion cards. And,
Okay,
that's when I did my Zion Christmas tree. And, we had a lot of fun with that. It was kind of like my introduction into cards during that time.
That would have been a very good result back then.
Yeah, no, it was. It was a wonderful outcome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's a lot of fun. So I know, Raphael, we've had you on before. We've heard a little bit about your background already, and we've heard a little bit about the impetus for starting Culture Collision and what that process has been like on a previous Geoff Wilson show. But as we sit here just a few weeks now from this year's show, how are we doing? You doing all right? You hanging in there? You feeling okay?
Honestly, I'm okay.
Okay.
I think that the first, now if you asked me this question 2.5 years ago, that first show, I was probably extremely stressed out. I was worn out, beat up. I think you can probably attest to that. I mean, anybody that was around me closely probably, man, I ain't gonna lie to you, I don't even know how I made it, but I'm fine now.
It's got to be one of the things that's got to add an extra layer of stress about organizing a big card show is it's a one-time event. You don't have the opportunity to miss. If you're most businesses, it's an ongoing effort, right? It's not like you're working up to one particular date. And like with our business here at Sports Card Investor, we try to get all of our content out on time. We normally do a great job of it. And we, try to get our new updates to market movers out on time and everything like that. But the truth of the matter is, if we're a day late on something, the world's not going to burn down. It's okay. Nope. But you can't be a day late on your card show opening to the public because you're going to have, all the dealers. I mean, it's your one chance. It's got to happen when you say it's going to happen on those dates, on those times. You got to be ready for when the doors open the first day. That's got to add an extra layer of stress to this whole thing.
Absolutely. You want to say something?
It does. I would say he's like a bridezilla, except for, it's not a marriage when it comes to Culture Collision. But yeah, it's extremely stressful. But I mean, we just go with it, and whatever happens, happens. And what a lot of people don't see in the background is a lot of fires that are put out. But everything pretty much works out. So I'm excited, and
You gonna tell them about an example?
No.
Remember we had supposed to have 8-foot tables. They gave us 6-foot tables.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, you're right.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean that I guess it's happened. It's live. It happens, right? Things go on like that, and yeah, I'm sure there's tons of stuff that happens behind the scenes to try to get ready for this.
Absolutely.
So we're sitting here a few weeks away from this one, January 26th through 28th at the Cobb Galleria Center here in Atlanta. Are you feeling good at this point? You feel like you've got your sponsors locked in at this point. You got most of the dealers locked in, I assume. Are you feeling good about this one rolling forward as planned?
Absolutely. I'm pretty excited. I think we're both excited about what's to come with Culture Collision. There's a lot of things we're working on leading up into 2025. I mean, I think you address an idea of the fact that we've been doing a show just annually. Mm-hmm. And I think we're really looking to kind of spread our wings and kind of fly and try to see what that looks like. I think we're motivated now to give Culture, as we continue to make this thing our baby and make it perfect, right? We want to see it, thrive and be in other states. So it's something that we're really interested in.
Yeah, but when it's all said and done, we're ready.
Good.
We're ready.
Well, we're excited. I mean, I love the Culture Collision brand. It's a great brand for Atlanta, and it'll be exciting if you take it beyond Atlanta or if you just stay here and do
Absolutely.
it more than once a year. We'd be pretty darn excited about either one.
Absolutely. Well, we actually made our second announcement for our second date. We were doing one in September.
Is that official now?
That's official.
Okay,
we're doing one in
good.
September 2024, right?
Good. All right, good. I knew that we had obviously talked about it, but
yeah.
I didn't know if it was
Absolutely.
official out there in the world official. So that's great. So this year we will have 2 Culture Collisions. We've got the one here at the end of January and then a second one in September.
That's correct.
Which would be perfect, coincide right with early football season,
Yep.
Right with the start of football season. So that's going to be great.
Yes.
Great timing for a card show. So what do people have to look forward to with Culture Collision this time?
There's a lot to look forward to. To me, in my opinion, Culture Collision is more or less a production than just a regular card show. And that's one of the things that Raphael kind of stressed on, especially like in the beginning phases of this, was just making sure that it wasn't typical. So there's a lot of interactive things that are going on. Of course, we still have the stage, a lot of activities, the 3 versus 3 game, the sneaker contest. It's just a lot going on. So look forward to the production. That's just, if I could sum it up, what I would say it is, a production.
And we're excited to be part of the production. So the Saturday night of Culture Collision, we're going to be hosting the trade night at our new CardsHQ store here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And that'll be a little bit of a preview because we're planning on opening to the general public on February 1st, which is a couple of days after Culture Collision. That will kind of be our opening to the public. But we're going to host the first time the public will ever actually get to see it will be during Culture Collision.
Yeah.
The people who come to Culture Collision and then can go to the trade night Saturday night, or just around the corner, it's going to be in our store. And so that's an exciting, being part of the events is exciting for us as well.
Absolutely.
It's a great perk.
Yeah. It's just the beginning too. So I think that's great to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the things you're doing. So you mentioned the basketball game, 3-on-3 basketball game. There's a charity influencer basketball game or hobby people basketball game, whatever. Talk to me about these things, because these are not things that other card shows do. It's kind of a unique thing to Culture Collision, and it adds an element of intrigue and excitement. A lot of people obviously participate. Other people like to watch what's going on. And so I think these are some unique things. So talk about what's happening, how you came up with this, and what people should expect this year.
So the 3 versus 3 game, that kind of was originated. He had went to a show in California, and a group of you guys had ended up playing basketball after the show.
Yeah.
And so after that, that's when he was like, let's do a basketball game in Culture Collision.
Yeah.
And I thought he was crazy. I'm like, wait a minute. It seems like a lot, but we made it happen. So that's originally where that came from. And so the 3 versus 3 game is definitely different than the CardStar game. A lot of people do get it confused. The 3 versus 3 game actually takes place at Culture Collision. Mm-hmm. And then the CardStar game is a charity basketball game that takes place at OTE. So there is a difference between the two, but that's kind of like where that came from, is that that basketball game that they did in Cali.
I'm really surprised you're remembered that.
Of course.
But honestly, yeah, she's absolutely right, man. We were in California. We went to Mark's Cards Trade Night, and I remember playing with a couple friends. We played basketball. I ain't played basketball in years, and I was like, oh, man, this is fun. And we just had fun playing basketball at the trade night, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this is a cool idea to add to a show. I mean, I've seen it at trade shows before, and it was definitely a challenge to try to figure out, but I think we did a great job at it. And now we're expanding to do a bigger cash purse. But I think the benefits of it, though, that people don't really realize is it brings and introduces new collectors to the space. Because I think, you know, whether you come in for sports cards, collectibles, memorabilia, sneakers, or anything else, people love basketball. People love, you know, and the thing is if you're priced out of all these different things, at least you can come and enjoy the show for a lot of different aspects. So I think that was a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are you full in terms of team registrations, or are you still doing team registrations?
I think by the time we get to the show date, we'll be full. I think right now we have about 2 team spaces available for that. But I'm pretty sure it's going to fill up. We've had people reaching out to us weekly.
Yes.
Yeah.
2 spots left.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone out there listening wants to get into the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, there might still be a chance. So contact Prism God on Instagram, I assume, or Culture Collision Trade Show on Instagram.
Don't hit me up. Hit a Culture Collision Trade Show.
Culture Collision Trade Show on Instagram.
But I will say this too: the other added perk that people don't really realize is people want to be a part of the charity basketball game, which I think is definitely a great thing to be a part of. But I think that, you know, it's hard to really figure out how do we make it fair without making it too complicated to add new people.
Right.
And I think that, you know, one of the things we added this year is whoever wins a 3-on-3 gets added to the pool too.
Oh.
So then that way they not only win money, they also get a chance to be a part of the pool for next year too. So, you know, if you want to make a name for yourself, great way to make a name for yourself is winning the tournament, then turn around and being added to the charity game and being a part of the, you know, the influential aspect. So
yeah, that's neat. And so you're referring to the Card Star game there, right? So we had the teams have been picked recently for that. I saw that online, right? There was a draft, and so what's that going to look like this time?
Man, so I'm gonna walk you through this process real quick, because when we did this draft, I think it was like, actually, believe it or not, it was Blez and Santiago's idea to do the draft.
Okay.
Because I was like, hey, man, we're going to randomize it again, because I think that we didn't want to do Team East versus Team West because it was bigger than that, right? It was what happened between Blez and Santiago that we turned around and turned into a positive situation, right? Which is where we're giving back to the community. And it's dope to see the sports card space give back to a community that really has nothing to do with sports cards, but that's how big of an impact that we really have. So I wanted to be able to come up with a way that was unique. And he was like, hey, let's just do a draft. Let's do a live draft online. And I'm like, you know, I think that may be a great idea. And trying to put that together was really stressful, but we managed.
Cool. Well, that game, there's a lot of big names in that game. A lot of you know, popular folks, people. The audience probably follows on Instagram and, you know, YouTube, et cetera. A lot of big name YouTubers and that type of thing are in on that. So it's going to be an exciting game to watch. And that's going to be streaming at our CardsHQ trade night, I understand, as well, right? So
correct.
Everyone coming to the trade night will be able to watch the Card Star game on television.
Absolutely. I think it's a great time. Great fun.
Awesome. Good. Well, I'm glad all of that's coming together. Those are all things we're excited about. But then, of course, there's the actual card show itself. And Culture Collision is a little different than most because you try to blend in not just cards, but other types of collectibles, but then also kind of almost beyond the world of sports as well, right? We get into sneakers and other areas. What is the type of mix that people should expect when coming to Culture Collision?
A collision of everything, honestly. Last year we had people who were selling sneaker candles, socks. I saw jewelry, rocks and stones and artwork. And it's just a mixture of a little bit of everything.
Yeah. I mean, you know, as we continue to go down this path with Culture Collision, we learn a lot more. And actually, what's funny is I learned a lot more about myself, too, because Culture Collision, like I said it before in past interviews, that Culture Collision is really a reflection of myself. I'm into a little bit of everything. I've always been, people know me as a collector, but a lot of guys didn't know that I come from a music background, right? So I did music production at one point in time, okay? People don't realize I used to be an artist back in the day,
and
too.
he sings very good.
So yeah, actually,
I did not know that.
Actually,
Yes, he sings.
All right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna have a music concert as part of the next Culture Collision.
No,
Maybe.
but if you want to, actually, in another interview, I'll just say this: if you want to do some searches, you can actually look up the Mariah Carey video "Hero." With it was on Oprah Winfrey show. I actually sang as a backup singer.
You sang?
For
on
Mariah Carey.
on Oprah Winfrey.
Actually,
Mariah Carey as a backup singer.
On more than one occasion.
And weren't you on a Disney
Really?
Channel too?
I was actually on the Disney Channel too as well. So I was actually on the Disney Channel as well as a young musician. Singing
Never
as well.
would have thought, huh?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Man,
when we talked about your life story a couple episodes ago, this didn't come up.
You know what's funny? I had another interview and I don't know, he triggered me and I started thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, I did do that too. It's like, I always tell my family, like, look, I've had every job. I've done everything. And, you know, I think that as you're a human being, I think it's important to try everything, that you figure out what you like. And what's funny about that is you don't necessarily know what you're going to go back to. And if you're good at something, it's okay to take a break and come back to it later on, because look at me now. Like, I'm going back to music. I'm going back to art. I'm going back to sneakers. And these are all the things that I was passionate about and I love. And now I'm like, this really matters to me. So, and I think we're focused on executing this on a high level and being able to successfully put this together. And because I feel like it's in my heart, it's in my soul. And I think we're going to definitely do that. So it's working out.
Awesome. That's super cool. Well, that's fascinating. Well, it gives all kinds of future possibilities to what we can do with the show.
Of course.
So a little bit of a mix of everything. What inspired you? I know, talking to you from like before you even started the first Culture Collision show a few years ago now, you were big on that idea of like, while cards are the majority of the show, you don't want it just to be cards. You want to bring other cultures together, other types of things together. I know sneakers was one of the
100%.
things you were kind of really focused on. Why do you think that's important?
Well, because as a collector, I'll say as a collector, I feel like you collect more than just one thing. I think if you sit here and say, I just collect cards, I think you're lying to yourself. I think, you come to find out maybe you collect watches, maybe you collect sneakers, maybe you collect vintage clothes, maybe you collect jerseys, game memorabilia, basketballs, baseballs, whatever, right? Comic books, and even pop culture toys. I think it's important to kind of keeping our minds open to those different things, and certain things can trigger those things, right? So you go to a show, you might see something. Oh man, yeah, I actually like that. That's cool. And now you're into a whole nother world. I remember buying Funko Pops 2 years ago and I never stopped. And then I ended up buying like 4 or 5 a week, and at one point in time. But certain things triggers other things. And I think that when I go to shows, because I've been to a million shows at this point, I look down at people's feet and I'm like, oh, okay. I see you, Geoff. I see, I see the guy back here. I can't say his name, but and then even my wife. So I think that there's a big opportunity for us. So while it is a sports card based show, I will continue to always say that because that's where my home is. I want to introduce people to different things, and I think that's really where my focus is.
Okay.
Our focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now I imagine the dealers are different though. Like the sports card dealers tend to hang with other sports card dealers, but then I guess you've got folks who deal in sneakers. Is there much crossover on the dealer side, or are you dealing with different groups and communities of dealers?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't really know the answer to that because I think that we don't really get a chance to interact with after the show.
Well, I would say for the sneaker people,
okay.
they definitely are familiar with each other.
Yeah.
And for cards, it's a little bit different. I do remember our very first show, we had someone who did have cards set up and then also sneakers at the same time. But that's the only time where I've seen like a mixture between cards and sneakers.
No, it was actually the last show. We had a guy who had never set up at Culture Collision before, and he actually understands cards.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. He just actually posted today.
I know what you're talking about.
Sell Your Soul. I'm gonna say his name. I think it's Sell Your Soul or Soul. I don't know, but he actually understands cards, and he's actually into sneakers, and he set up as a sneaker vendor, and he was like, "Oh man, I didn't know it was like this. Next time I'm gonna bring this." And I think in a perfect scenario, I can see us as a collector, right? I sell a card for $20,000, whatever, $5,000, $200, or kids, right? Kid sells a card for $500. Guess what? He has a choice to buy another card, or he can go buy a pair of sneakers. Maybe maybe he pulled the card, he has nothing into it. Now he can go buy a pair of $200 shoes and still continue to have an investment, money to be able to work off of. So I think there's something there. Plus, some sneakers are deemed collectibles. Sneakers go up in value as well. I mean, there's tons of shoes. I mean, the shoes retail my wife has on now are $175, and I think resales like $700 to $1,000. So
you should really take those off. They won't resell that much if you wear them. You gotta clean those up.
I'm keeping these.
actually, what's funny is on a secondary market, right? There's a secondary market to sports, to sneakers as well as sports cards. So because secondary market with sneakers, she can wear these shoes for $175 and sell them worn for $400. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, it still gives her a chance to enjoy them while still being able to make a sound investment, so to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. That's pretty fascinating. Yeah. That's cool. Well, I've seen that crossover occur recently here in the office. One of our sports card employees, I think he's over there. I think Parker's over here today. He was on Whatnot watching one of our streams one night. We were in here live selling on Whatnot, live selling cards, and he was watching one of our streams, and he's kind of looking around. He's like, "Oh wow, there's people selling sneakers live on Whatnot." He ends up going into one of the sneaker streams and ends up buying a pair of sneakers from the stream right there on Whatnot, right? So it's he's a card collector, happens to see some sneakers, buys a pair of sneakers. So there's a bit of crossover there that can happen for sure.
Absolutely.
Interesting. For people out there right now who are thinking to themselves that they might want to start a card show, right? I mean, that there's a lot of people, whether it's a card shop or a card show, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the hobby, such as yourself, rewind 5 years ago and you're kind of having these thoughts in your mind. What type of advice would you give them on how they would approach something like this?
I would say like you mean in a sense of starting a card show? Or
if you got an entrepreneur out there who's looking to kind of cut their teeth and start and do their own card show, what are they in for? What's that going to be like?
I would say it's just a lot of trial and error.
Okay.
When we first started this, we did not have a blueprint. I asked him a simple question. He said, card show. And then we just kind of had to figure it out. But that's like most entrepreneurs. Like, you can't necessarily even say we had a business. We didn't have a business plan. It's just like the plan is in your heart and you just kind of make it happen. So to any aspiring card show owners, just do it. Figure out the kinks as you go along. But I mean, you just have to start somewhere. So starting is the big part.
What's the biggest challenge, do you think? Is it getting enough dealers there the first time? Is it getting the public aware of it? Is it what do you think is the challenge to get going?
I would say the most challenging thing are sponsor relationships.
Okay.
Getting the dealers, that wasn't a difficult thing for us because everyone knew who Prism God was.
Right.
So I think that made it really easy because he's trusted and well known and things of that nature. But I would say sponsor relationships.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Takes a little extra effort.
Yes. A lot of extra effort extra and consistency and follow up. So
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Gotcha.
Yeah. I would say everything that she said. Then on top of that, I think that if you're a visionary, then I think you just have to be okay with hearing no a million times.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And then also, as a visionary, you have to be okay with people telling you you're crazy and it doesn't make sense. But if it makes sense in your heart, you just have to, what it is really just, you haven't articulated correctly. And I think that that's really the biggest thing when you're dealing with trying to be successful in anything that you're doing. I think that you should just focus on just how to communicate that to other people. Because I think that that's one of the things, even with sponsors, right? It's a communication portion of it, right? You got to meet the right person that's going to buy into what you're doing. I remember having a conversation with Bob Means, and I told him, and I've said this before in other interviews, I told him, if you're not at my show, then then you're not a part of the hobby. And I still mean that. I still mean that to this day. I still feel like, if you're not a part of Culture Collision, you're not a part of the hobby, because I felt like, and it's deeper than that, because it's not just about Culture Collision. If I'm not a part of the hobby, I don't come to support your shop, right? Because I think that has to be, we have to support each other. That's how this thing works. And I think that if we have all similar belief, right? We want to see this space grow. We want to see it get better, right? We want to see it get to the next level. We have to be on one accord about at least something. And I think that if you see that we're trying to create new collectors, and like, if you don't like the solution, you don't like what's going on, be a part of the solution, not necessarily the problem. And like, let's try to figure out how to get to the next level. And I think that that's what we try to do a lot of times. I think even in our first engagement that we've ever had with you, I think we talked to you and said, hey, look, these are some of the ideas we want to do. We want to implement these things. Like even when we first did the sponsor hunt. And the sponsor hunt, we say, hey, look, guys, we want you to give us some gifts because we want to be able to give back to the community. We want to give back to and do more for the kids because they can't afford $5,000 cards, $2,000 cards, shoot a $500 card, right? So we have to be able to create, because we've been transactional for so long, that we have to create other elements that have been missing, But the other aspect of it is, man, the space we have $1 billion space that has not been marketed correctly. And I think that there's an opportunity there. And I think that we saw that. And I think that that's why we go so hard. I'm sure if you bought a ticket from us, I'm sorry for the guys out there, but she's responsible. You probably get 1 million emails a day, but at least you know about it, right?
That would be me.
And at least you know about it. But I think that those are the things that can make you successful. And I rather push you away knowing that, I'm pushing an agenda. Or you say, hey, look, you know what? I believe in what he's doing and I'm going to support. So I said a lot.
It's okay.
Well, that's great. Well, I am looking forward to this year's Culture Collision. I think it's going to be a great time as always. Yes. And, the time with CardsHQ is something special as well that has me even more excited about it this year. I heard you want to flip the script and ask me some questions. Should we do that here as well?
Yeah. You know what? Why not? You want to ask a question?
Go ahead. You have your question.
Okay. Well, I'll start off with this. All right. So welcome to the Prism God Show.
It's a takeover.
All right. So it's a takeover. So check this out. So you've been to a couple Culture Collisions now.
Yeah.
All of them.
Absolutely right. He's been to every Culture.
All of them.
Absolutely. Of course. So it's a 2-part question. Let me see. I wrote this down somewhere. Gosh, I'm not as prepared.
Got to get it sounding good here. We got to get it.
Absolutely. So look, there's a 2-part question. First part, do you feel that Culture Collision has made an impact in our hobby?
Do I feel Culture Collision has made an impact in our hobby? Absolutely. Yes.
And how?
So in a couple of different ways, right? So first of all, I think the Southeast has been underrepresented in the hobby. Right? You've got, obviously in the Northeast, there's a very longtime collector base in the Northeast. And there's a lot of big shows like the Philly show and the Chantilly show and some shows in New York that have been going on forever. And it's very well represented out there, with a kind of a long-time collector base. Out on the West Coast, you've got an infrastructure that includes famous card shops like Burbank Sports Cards, and now they've got their own Burbank show and other shows that, that take place on the West Coast. That Frankensons is out there, and so a lot of infrastructure kind of on the West Coast and a known card community out there. And then in the Midwest, you've got, obviously the National is in the Midwest most of the time, Chicago or Cleveland, and you've got the Midwest Monster and a lot of stuff going on there. Dallas has the Dallas card show. So Texas is well represented with different card shows, TriStars out of Houston. So there's different things all throughout the country, but the Southeast I felt like has always been a little bit underrepresented particularly when it comes to shows and events and things like that for sports cards. So I think that having a premier show for the Southeast is a great thing. And so I think that is impactful for the hobby for sure. We have a national caliber of show taking place in the Southeast. And so that's really good. And that's good for Atlanta as well, which I like. And then I like the mix as well with kind of the thinking beyond the sports card world. So I think that's another thing that we haven't seen enough of in the hobby, and hopefully we'll continue to see more of that. But I think, to have a great card show event, to have a great event, it needs to be beyond just a bunch of sports card dealers setting up with tables. There needs to be more to it than that, right? And you're mixing in obviously different types of collectibles and sneakers and that kind of thing. But I also like the basketball tournament and stuff like that. Like, I think there needs to be more event activation around any major card show. And I think honestly, that's an area where I've criticized the National in the past, because I feel like the National, it does a great job of being a really big card show, but like, where's the other stuff?
Yeah.
Where's the basketball tournament at the National, or whatever their spin on that's going to be? They finally started kind of endorsing an official trade night recently, but even that wasn't a national thing until I think this last year. And so, or the year prior to last is when they officially started endorsing that. Right. So there needs to be more. And you guys, I think your thought and your approach is thinking of it that way.
Appreciate
Great
that.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was amazing.
All right. So second part of that question is, how has it influenced you? How has Culture Collision influenced Geoff Wilson?
Well, for one very direct way, it has motivated and rushed us to open up our CardsHQ shop for this year's Culture Collision. Because when you look at the map, or when you look at the calendar of, you know, what is happening in the world of sports cards in Atlanta, well, there's one very obvious thing you're going to put on the calendar, and that's Culture Collision. That's like that. So if you're thinking about, well, I might want to, you know, I'm going to open up a shop and I might want to coincide it with a big event. Well, your big event is Culture Collision. So that just totally makes sense. Right. So, I mean, it's definitely had the impact from that. I also think that to a degree, Culture Collision happening gave me confidence in doing the card store, because it's a little bit of an ecosystem effect, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like, I think in general, like the more things sports card related that can be occurring in the city, the better it is for the overall ecosystem. I feel like it's like it's like a 1 + 1 = 3 situation. And so, you know, I'm happy with other card shops opening and investing and that kind of thing. Like, I want that to happen, because I see it, and I don't know if all the other card shop owners feel this way. I think a lot of them do, where they want, if the entire ecosystem develops, if there become more collectors in the Southeast US as a result of more card shops opening, Culture Collision taking place, etc., then everybody's going to benefit, right? And so that's what I think is important. So I think from that perspective as well, the fact that Atlanta now has a big show in Culture Collision gives me confidence. And now, especially now you're doing it twice a year, which is great news. That gives me confidence that the local, the community around cards is going to continue to build.
It's a great point. Also, I was going to say your shoes are nicer too.
Oh, thank you. My shoes have improved.
Yes.
I've seen you stepped it up, man. I've seen the Chucky Dunkies. I've seen those. I've seen the Air Force Ones even for Christmas.
Yeah. I got some nice ones this year.
So I was going to say he stepped it up on the sneakers this year.
Been trying.
And I know he'll continue to get better. And you're sure your son and your kids are going to keep you youthful.
Yes.
So they're going to make sure you're cool on sneakers too.
100%.
So the last question I wanted to ask you is actually an interesting question, because I wanted to know, what way would you improve Culture Collision?
That's a great question. How would I improve Culture Collision?
It wouldn't hurt my feelings. You can tell me it's bad
we're not
too.
sensitive.
We're not. Yeah.
So I would say I would build in more activities for kids. I think I would build in like a designated kids trade area, but I think I would build in some activities for kids, like pitching speed booth, or like a little batting cage, or sports related stuff, Pop-A-Shot tournament for kids, maybe by age bracket. Some interactive stuff that's probably sports related. Maybe it could even be sports card related. Maybe there could be some contests around, like, who can identify what a particular card is from seeing a just a little sliver of it or something like that. Like some stuff like that. Like I went to one card show where they did a sports trivia contest for kids, and stuff like that. I might do a little bit more programming like that. I think maybe having an area of the show floor that's designated just for kids for that kind of stuff could be a cool thing in the future. Maybe some food trucks. I don't know what I know different convention centers have different rules on that kind of thing.
Fortunately, they don't allow.
They won't let us.
Yeah. So
that's
the tough thing with event venues. Like sometimes it comes down to what they, beer trucks and, that kind of thing. Like I've always thought that. So I went to Gen Con, which is one of the big trading card game shows, and
in Indianapolis, right?
Indianapolis.
Right.
And outside of the show, they had set up an entire large food truck park, but it was more than that. They had different vendors there. They had beer trucks. They had live music. They had a stage. And they also had outside the main halls for the show, they also had like interactive exhibits. They had some museum-like exhibits. They had some interactive things that people could all contribute to, like building different things together, like collaborative things. There was just more to it. It was more hands-on. There was more to it than just the show itself. And it was really designed to encourage you to come for the show and see the stuff on the show floor, but then hang around afterwards and go do some of this other stuff. And when I looked at like a show like the National, I feel like that's the scope of show where it should have all of that same stuff and then some. And where's that? Like that's missing. That's not there today. Where's the hang around after and watch, listen to the live band and, hang out at the beer park and that kind of thing afterwards, right? And so I recognize Culture Collision's not the scope of Gen Con or the scope of the National yet, but weaving in a little bit more of that type of, post-entertainment, I think would be interesting. Now, one thing you have that hotel there. And I know I remember last year, like it was packed tonight with trade night, people trading in the lobby and all that kind of stuff. So there's a desire, obviously, for people to stay after and do stuff. And so maybe a little more like that is what I would bring into it.
So I love those ideas. And the reason why I love them is because I actually have ambitions for those things to happen. The problem is, I'll tell you a couple of different problems. First of all, my wife won't let me.
But
it's partially
she wants you home by a certain time.
No.
It's not even that. It's not even that.
Do you want to answer, or do you want me to say something first?
It's the budget. Like he will spend every single last dime, and he cannot do that.
Yeah.
So all right. So and this is where the sponsor comes into play.
Yeah.
Right. You have great ideas. Right now, we're literally only on phase 2 of Culture Collision. Well, I'm sorry. Yes, it's phase 2 of Culture Collision. We really haven't even hit phase 3 or 4 of where we see Culture Collision. But I think that what has to happen is we need more sponsors who buy into what we're trying to do, which unfortunately, the only show that gets that budget is the National.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what I'd say a minute ago, it's $1 billion space that has not been marketed correctly. And a lot of times, it's a lot of things that are missing. There's a lot of things that people miss, and I'm thankful that you actually see that it should be less transactional and more interaction and more of what's going on. But like strategically, I didn't want to do a baseball game the same weekend as Culture Collision ever again. We learned 2 shows ago that when we do a baseball game the same weekend as Culture Collision, guess what people do? They leave the show, they go to the baseball game, and they come back. I think that because we do a show once a year, we're unable to figure out certain things until it happens. And that also was the first year we actually used the Cobb Galleria, which was the same weekend as the baseball game. But we learned, we're never going to do that again. I want to keep as many people in a Culture Collision as possible, which is why we have the 3-on-3 basketball game, which is why we're going to have a Magic the Gathering and Pokemon tournament, which is why we want to focus on doing a better panel, which is why we actually do have a kids program that we're doing this year that we're going to be rolling out really soon. So, and that's actually going to be ran by my best friend's sister, Jesse Howard, Jesse Howard's sister. And we're doing a program in his name, which is going to be dedicated towards educating the youth, which is, I think, a great thing because he was such a mentor to me. He literally was my point A for everything. And now I don't have that. And I think that it's important, especially in this space, to become successful, having someone that you can lean on and make sure you're doing the right things. The most successful people in this space have those people. And we want to create a program for that and make it interactive, give free packs. But the problem is when you reach out to a lot of sponsors, you get no email response, no phone calls. And that's a part of the trials that you deal with, right? As a host, I'm not crying, because at the end of the day, the show will still continue to go on. And that's why we appreciate people like yourself as being a sponsor who want to walk, ride this ride with us, while we're continually trying to make things better. But unfortunately, we've only had the chance of really doing a show once a year for a lot of different reasons. And that was really one of them. But if it was up to me, I would spend every dime. I wouldn't care about making money, because it's important for me to be able to have a great product, have a great show, create something that people will say, man, I don't care what I'm doing, but I'm always going to be a Culture Collision. That was the initial idea, which is why we only did the show once a year. But I think now, again, we want to see it get to the next level. And I believe in order for us to get to the next level, we got to be able to go to places that can't afford to come to Atlanta. Maybe we got to go to different cities, and California, New York, and more are definitely on the radar for us.
Yeah, Culture Collision is a marathon.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
and I have to remind him of that.
Yeah.
I imagine it's tough. I don't know a lot about, obviously, the space of throwing a card show or what it goes into it. I would think that if you were able to do a series of them, that maybe that would be easier ask of a sponsor to get a sponsor on board, because I know as a business owner, as a company owner, it's sometimes hard to commit to a one-off event and plan for it and get everything aligned around it. It may not be enough of a exposure lift to commit to one thing. But I know, for example, looking over to the trading card game space, Collecticon, which is a popular series of shows there. They're doing, I think they're doing 20 this year. They
crazy.
did 12 last year.
Yeah, I remember they did 12.
I believe they expanded. I think they expanded to 20 this year. So they're happening every 3 weeks or something all over the country, and they go everywhere. They go all over. In fact, they're coming to Atlanta this year, late in the year. I think maybe in like November or something like that. But they're all over the country. And I imagine part of the reason why they're doing a lot more is because they're looking to sign their title sponsors and have them do all 20 events.
Gotcha.
Right. And then their title sponsors are probably like, okay, well, this will be our major investment of the year. And we're going to go to all 20 of these things. And then that's how we'll get exposure all over the country. And for those sponsors, it's probably easier for them to deal with one Collecticon and know that they're going to get exposure all over the country versus to deal with this regional show over here, that one there, that one there, that one there, that one there, et cetera. 20 different regional shows with 20 different ownership groups and all that stuff.
As funny as I've said that before in the past in conversations with Joyce, and I literally felt the exact same way. But, unfortunately, the show for a very long time was just me and her. We're pretty much, I'm the face, not as beautiful, but I'm the face. And then she helps on the back portion of it. But because of that, we haven't had the benefit of being able to do those type of things. But as we continue to grow, and the thing is we have to do proof of concept first, which is we've done successfully the proof of concept. We've ran 3 successful shows. People, are willing to ride the train with us. And then now we do feel the exact same way. We do feel like we want to continue to do more and more shows. But I've also had those conversations with sponsors, and I've said to them, hey, look, we're thinking about doing 2 shows this year and doing more. Would you come with us? And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's tough, though. But I agree with your logic, though. I think it makes a lot of sense. But I think it's easier said than done, in my opinion.
But regardless, Culture Collision will go on.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying it. I'm not complaining whatsoever.
Yeah.
But, I think that, when you're going back to that original question of how, some of the things you deal with, those are some of the things you deal with. And that's, you have to figure out how to grow and how do I go from there. But the good thing is there's a million different companies out here that you can always make a phone call to.
That's right.
So we'll find someone.
Yeah. All right. Well, good questions.
Yes.
Good questions.
Thank you.
I'm glad that I don't have to be the one to answer some of those. So that's your job. I just got to show up and have fun at the event.
Right. Yeah. You know, I feel like in a perfect world, I would love to enjoy the show. Like people say, because here's the thing, I'm still a vendor at heart. So like sometimes you'll like probably on Saturday, probably late Saturday, sometimes Sunday, I get a chance to walk the sneaker area. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want those shoes. Put those to the side.
Yeah.
It's like, hey babe, you want these shoes? Yeah. Cause like, I try to support all the vendors as much as possible. Like we bought art last year, and that was the other aspect of it. We've embraced the whole aspect of pop culture as art as well. And I think that people don't realize they like art until they really like, oh, you know what? Something triggered. Now, that painting over there at Jordan, I actually like that. That's something I'm into. What did that cost? Oh, that cost about the same as this card that I just bought. Okay, cool. I think I might like that too. And that's what made us get into even our own art. We have Kid Culture, which is actually our 12-inch model of which actually was done to by an artist 3 years ago. The first concept for Culture Collision was Kid Culture. We just never used them until this year, which I thought was a really cool idea. And I think, it's Atlanta peach color. But I thought it was a really cool idea. And I'm like, man, let me just go back to my notes and see what I got here. And I felt like it was a really cool idea. And so I feel like the importance of, like, once you kind of figure it out, it's like, you expand past sports cards. Most people do. They just don't realize it.
Yeah.
So we got to figure out ways to tie these things together, which is the fun part. So
cool. Well, I'm excited to see how it comes together this year, January 26th through 28th here in Atlanta. And for anyone out there who wants to grab their tickets or find out more about the whole event, what's the best way for them to do so?
CultureCollisionTradeShow.com.
There you go.
Culture Collision Trade Show, Instagram.
Yeah, you can go to
Raphael and
Instagram
Joyce,
as well.
this was a pleasure. Appreciate
Yes.
you guys coming on the Geoff Wilson Show.
Yes.
And hope to see all of you out there at the Culture Collision Show. And just a reminder, these full-length episodes of the Geoff Wilson Show are available both on YouTube, under the Geoff Wilson Show on YouTube, as well as on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Take care.